that are unable to join us. And we'll get our PowerPoint set up here. And then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, I hope everyone's having a wonderful Tuesday. I don't know about you all, but today at 4 o'clock, I will be running from my desk in my home office into my kitchen to begin prepping for Thanksgiving. So I hope you all are excited about the week and you're going to be able to take some much needed time off for Thanksgiving, even though it may look a little different or a lot different in some cases from previous years. I hope you're still able to enjoy it and have a good time. So we'll go ahead and get started. We have a lot of things to talk about today, and I did reduce our time from 2 hours to 1 hour based on some feedback that I received on our survey. So hopefully we'll be able to accomplish a lot today in a short amount of time. We have some folks waiting in our waiting room, so let me admit them, and we'll go ahead and get started. So hopefully you have your cup of coffee or your in my case, I have Diet Dr. Pepper. So sit back and enjoy our updates for today. As I said, we have quite a few things to talk about today. We're going to talk about some reminders, some updates, some things happening in the world of federal programs. And then we're going to dig into Title II. I have noticed that we have quite a few questions coming in from our schools. Also during our monthly programs chats, we've had a lot of discussion around Title II and what in the world do we do with Title II in the world of COVID. So we're going to share some ideas. And hopefully you all will be actively engaged in our discussion today and we can learn from each other. And just as a reminder, if you will, please mute yourself. There will be lots of opportunities for you to participate in today's meeting and ask questions, but so that we don't have all that feedback, if you will, please mute yourselves. In fact, I think I can mute you right here. Yeah, okay. All right, so then we're going to jump into a discussion regarding parents' right to know and the notice to parents regarding teacher certification status. This month, all of those documents were due, or both of those documents were due, and several documents were due in regards to parent notifications. So we want to talk about what the difference is, because I think there has been some confusion between the parents' right to know statement and then the letter that you have to send to parents regarding teacher certification. So we're going to talk about what the difference is between those two items. Then, if you are not a Title I school, you are free to hop off of the chat, because then we're going to jump into some Title II issues around next steps. We have finally received final allocations for Title I. So we're going to jump into that discussion about what's next and talk about some parent and family engagement policy checklists, also compact checklists, and then we're going to talk about those impact statements. All right, so let's jump right into our updates and reminders. I think we have Nick on the line with us today. So Nick, feel free to jump in anytime you want to when it comes to some of our finance issues. But I wanted to give everyone an update on the CARES Act funding. As you know, CARES Act funding has come to us in several different ways this year. One is through the ESSER grant. There have not been any changes to the ESSER grant. It remains the same as it was. All of the guidance around that is the same. Lots of you are in the process of submitting reimbursements for your ESSER activities, so that's good. Spend, 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 submit, submit, submit. We want to get those funds spent and reimbursed to you. So the questions are around the CRF funds and also the technology and PPE reimbursements. So if you remember, I guess it's been about a month ago now, maybe even more. Things seem to be moving very quickly around here. But you received some information from me regarding the request for CRF, that Corona Relief Fund funds application, and a lot of you submitted applications for that. You also received some information from Nick regarding reimbursements for technology and PPE. So once we submitted all of that, the State Department turned around and said, hey, just kidding, we're doing something a little different. So we had to kind of back up a little bit. Instead of schools requesting activities and funds based on what your needs are, which is still going to be based on your needs, but you had no idea what the allocation amount was. Many of you called and said, I have no idea how much to ask for because we don't know how much, they might possibly allow. So the State Department is now going to release allocations to each district. And so we have received some preliminary allocations, but we have no idea what the final allocation is going to be yet. Those final allocations are expected to be received from the State Department in early December. And so what they've done basically is take that CRF application, which had some activities in there around things like tutoring and other instructional type activities, and they've taken that and combined it with the PPE and the technology. So you can see on this slide, there are 4 different areas in which the CRF funds can be spent. One has to do with school safety measures that have taken place in response to COVID-19. School nurses for those schools that do not currently have a full-time school nurse. And then you see some of the things you saw before in that CRF fund, things like tutoring, supplemental services, and support services to engage unengaged students, interventionists, after-school learning extensions. So all of those things where you might find your students in need based on COVID-19, the deficits resulting from COVID-19. And then you see number 4 there has to do with the technology. So the CRF funds, again, we have not received final allocations. Those are expected in early December. Once those are received, our finance department will work on allocating that funding out to schools. We don't know what that application process is going to look like yet, but once we have more information, we will let you know. The funds should be used to fund COVID-related expenditures in those 4 categories we just talked about that have been incurred between July 1st of this year and September 30th of 2021. Nick, do you have anything you want to add in regards to that? I think you're still on the line with us.
But if anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer. So.
Okay, thank you, Nick. I appreciate that. We've been getting lots of questions regarding, what happened with those funds and how we're moving forward. All right, so just a couple of reminders about some due dates you had this month. If you're a Title I school, you had the procedure for processing parent suggestions, a copy of your homeschool compact, and a copy of your parent and family engagement policy. Again, a little bit later in today's coffee chat, we're going to talk about what should be in each of those policies so that you can understand some of the feedback that you might be receiving. Title II, you had the parent's right to know, a screenshot from your website showing your most recent report card, your hiring processes and procedures or policy there, and any notices to parents regarding teacher certification. So that would be, again, we're going to talk about the difference between the parent's right to know and that notice that you actually send to parents. So if you may or may not have had to send that out. That is actually due 10 days after you actually send that out to parents. So again, we're going to talk a little more about that later in the coffee chat. Just a reminder to those of you who may be joining us for the first time or maybe don't know, we have a document out there that helps to let you know exactly what's due in each grant for federal programs and some resources available to you. So once you receive this PowerPoint, you can click to access it. It's located on our website. And you'll know exactly what's due when it's due. So just to kind of give you a little bit of background, in the past, we have not been able to really dig into some of those homeschool compacts, parent and family engagement policies, and some of the other items that are required for submission. As you know, the past 2 years that I've been here, we have had audits in just about everything, just about every grant we have. So time prevented us from being able to really dig in. We were kind of checking the boxes to show that you had it. So now I'm really excited this year that that our federal programs department has an assistant. So Takia is my assistant. So she is helping to go through some of those things to make sure that they have the components that they're supposed to have. So I know some of you, I think I received an email from someone saying I submitted it based on what I submitted last year and it was accepted last year. Well, keep in mind that we were on a time crunch to try to get things in to meet the deadlines for the audit. But now that we've had a wonderful audit, everything's going well, we want to be able to help you on a deeper level, make sure you have what you're supposed to have and that some of your items have what they're supposed to have. Some things will be checked at a deeper level, but some we will continue to check to say, yes, you have it. For example, the hiring procedures and policy, I'm not going to go through that to say, yes, this is great, it's wonderful. We're not going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. That's one of those items we're going to check to make sure you have it. The homeschool compacts, the parent and family engagement policy, we have some checklists that we're using, and you guys have seen these before, to make sure that your policies have everything that they need to have. Okay, here's another update. I've been getting lots of questions regarding direct certification and how to code those students in PowerSchool. I understand that there was a joint training a few weeks ago between our district and Erskine, and some folks were told during that training that they should code their free direct certification students as free in PowerSchool and not to code them as FDC. At least that's some information that I received. So we dug into that a little deeper. I worked with Vashanta Harris to make sure we have the correct information that we needed from the State Department. So this is the information coming straight from the State Department's nutrition program team. The proper code for students identified as direct certification is FDC. So again, I don't work directly with PowerSchool other than getting the information that I need to help determine which schools qualify for Title I. So if you have questions about this, please talk to Vashanta. But we want to make sure that we code those students correctly. It's for purposes of identifying your schools as Title I eligible. We add together the FDC, those direct cert students, they're free based on direct cert, the reduced, and the free students to get your poverty percent. But it becomes really important from my perspective when we have to check off the box for compliance to make sure we're double checking and monitoring some of those forms. So in January, you will receive a list of 5 students from your PowerSchool report, and I will ask you to tell me how those students were identified as being in poverty, and if they're on that, if they were identified as a result of being on your direct certification list, you would send me the list of the direct certification students. If they were identified based on a free and reduced lunch form or the alternative household income form, you would submit that form to show that they were identified in that way. So again, if you have additional questions about that, please contact either myself or Vashanta, and we can help you work through that. Okay, Nick's going to love this slide. We don't want to leave any money on the table. So just as a reminder, I know I've said this over and over. I feel like that's the only thing I've been harping on lately during our monthly meetings, but FY19 and FY20 Title I, II, III, IV, CSI, and ATSI grants expire September 30th of 2021. So let's talk about this for just a minute. During our monthly meetings, as we've been talking through what you may have remaining in your FY19 and FY20 grants, one of the things I've been recommending to you is to really take a look at those balances, know exactly what you have remaining in those grants, make amendments. You know, you have 2 more amendment deadlines for this year. One is January 15th and one is April 15th. So you'll want to go ahead and make sure you amend those plans either I recommend January 15th for time reasons. But make sure you amend those plans so that you can spend that money. My other recommendation is to make sure that you are trying to spend all the funds in FY19 and FY20 grants by the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. Now, I'm saying that because when July comes, as you know, reimbursements for expenditures for this fiscal year, July 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 21, are due by July 20th of 21. So we want to make sure that you're amending your grants so that you can spend that money by the end of the fiscal year, even though you have a couple more months. You have until September the end of September of next year to spend those FY19 and 20 funds, there's going to be some things happening during that time frame that may work against you. So keep in mind that we're going to be, doing those final reviews of any expenditures, any reimbursement claims that have been submitted during that time. That's also the time of the year where we are submitting to the State Department Title I and Title II plans. And if the State Department continues on the route they're going, we may also be submitting Title IV or Title, even though I don't work with Title III anymore, could possibly be Title III. They're getting those allocations out to us a little sooner than they have in the past couple of years. But anyway, during that time, all of that stuff is going to be happening. We have one program manager at the district office who works specifically with our district. So she's going to be looking at programs from all of her districts that she works with, the applications that are coming in for Title I and Title II, any amendments that may be coming in for that time. So I worry that we're not going to have as quick a turnaround on amendments that we have this time of the year if we wait until the summer to do amendments. So the other thing is if you wait until then to do amendments, you're going to be waiting for approval before you spend that money. And I worry that you're not going to get it spent by that September 30th deadline. So with all of that said, my recommendation is to try to get every penny spent in your FY19 and FY20 grants by the end of the fiscal year, knowing that you still have a little bit of time in the summer to spend that money. But if amendments are needed, that gets in a little bit of a tricky situation. Okay. Also, I noticed that our finance team is having monthly penny patrol meetings, and the next meeting is scheduled for December 11th. And their main topic of discussion will be federal program balances for FY19, 20, and 21. So do you have any questions about any of that before we move forward? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. I cannot see our chat box right now. Let's see. I can move over.
Hey, Tracy, it's Maureen Creasy.
Hey, Maureen.
Oh, one of your favorite nags. I'm sorry.
You are never a nag. I call you job security.
Oh, okay, absolutely.
You know I love you.
Oh, I love you too, and you've been so helpful. So I wanted to just, have you reiterate part of our conversation from last week once we are in this amendment phase with either 19 or 20 grants, that we cannot expend general funds to go ahead and do something and then use that FY19 or 20 grant money to reimburse. Is that correct?
Okay. I tried to catch all of what you were saying. So you're saying that, I don't know if I understand what you're saying. Say that one more time.
Let's say we've got teachers that are going to sign up for classes and registration is in December, and we've got to get that paid before we would get through the amendment process and approval.
Okay, yes. You're talking about emergency amendments that we talked about, correct?
Well, even if they're not emergency, I mean, basically, if it's not approved, we can't reimburse, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So that is a very good question. Thank you for explaining that to me. Yes, we did talk about looking at your amendments in terms of making sure that you submit the amendments, thinking in terms of if you're moving your money to a new activity that is not in your plan, you have to wait until it is approved before you can actually implement that activity. So if you have an amendment that you submit on January 15th, but you maybe have some courses, I think we were talking about Title II and looking at some GT courses perhaps for some of your teachers. If that starts prior to January, we have to have an amendment approved before you can move forward with that. Okay, so if you end up in a situation where an activity is going to take place prior to February, because you got to give us a little bit of time to make sure we get the amendment entered into GEMS. And then once I've entered it into GEMS, I have to submit it. It goes to our finance team. Our finance team has to review it. Then it goes to our superintendent, and the superintendent submits it. Once it gets to the State Department, it also goes through a 3-level approval process. So our program manager reviews it. Now, I always let you know once our program manager has approved it, because I've never once, ever seen an amendment go past the program manager and it not get approved, because by then you've had 4 people taking a look at that amendment to make sure it's up and it's on the up and up. So again, if you have a situation that you're going to need to pay for an activity prior to it starting, like in January, communicate that to me, and we can do what I've been calling emergency amendments, which means it's taking place outside of those 3 deadline times that we give you each year. Does that help, Maureen?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for bringing that up, because that is a very important point to bring up. And also keep in mind, most of our schools are out the rest of this week. Some are out the entire week this week. And then we have, most schools are out for 2 weeks in December. So that's going to give you a very short window of opportunity prior to that January 15th deadline. So if you need to get something in as an emergency amendment, let me know. If it can wait until January 15th, then please wait until January 15th, because that'll help us get some of those emergency ones submitted that have to be paid for prior to January 15th. Okay.
Tracy, do you have a deadline on the emergency requests?
I would definitely get it to me before, I have to look at my calendar and see, and I can't pull it up right now, but Christmas vacations, before you leave for Christmas vacation.
Okay.
Maureen, I can't remember if you and I discussed what that date was, but it was at around the 14th of December, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have one, talk to me individually about that so that we
Okay.
can set a time period to make sure you get it in before I leave for vacation.
Right.
And so it'll be into the State Department in plenty of time. Also, keep in mind, I used to work at the State Department, and they end up having a bunch of time at the end of the year that they need to take off. And so a lot of folks take that off in December.
Yep.
So that may interfere with being able to get some things approved as well. So my end thought on that is planning is very important. So make sure you plan really well for your beginning of the year amendments and things like that, because we do get into some situations where time is not on our side.
Yep.
All right, good questions, Maureen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, or Nick, do you have anything you want to add to that from the finance perspective? Okay. All right. We'll keep.
Tracy.
Yes.
Hey, this is Courtney Girolamo. I have a couple of questions.
Okay, Courtney.
Number one, that January 15th, can you give us an estimated, and I know you don't have full control over it, but when do you think we could expect to have approval, just for planning purposes?
Yes, that's another good question. I would give at least 2 weeks. So I would plan for things that are going to take place beginning in February.
Okay.
Now, we've been able to get some quick turnaround, but again, sometimes it just depends on how many people are submitting amendments to me. That process, it can go very quickly or it can go very slowly, because it depends on how much I need to go back and forth with the school to get their amendment correct before I submit it in GEMS. And again, once I submit in GEMS, it goes to finance for approval. They review budget codes and those types of things, and then our superintendent has to submit it. And then we have to wait, and we're at the mercy of the State Department. Now, I will say the State Department has been very good recently at getting back to us within a week. I mean, some of them have been coming the same day. That's not something I've ever seen before. So I'm excited to have those quick turnarounds from the State Department. But again, lots of folks will be doing amendments across the state, I think, beginning in January through that April 15th deadline. And I don't know that we're going to see that quick turnaround. So I would, at least give 2 weeks.
Okay. And then second question, if we need to amend our ESSER grant, is that the same deadlines?
Yes, thank you. I did not put ESSER in there, but the same deadlines for ESSER. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
And I will tell you, ESSER takes a lot longer. I'm still working on the first ESSER grant that we submitted, the amendment that we submitted has been approved. We had to do a second ESSER amendment just for some emergency things that have happened and some coding that needed to be changed, and we still have not submitted it. It's a whole different beast. It doesn't go through the GEM system like our other grants. So it's a lot harder to submit and a lot more time consuming. So I would give a little more time on ESSER. If you have an amendment for ESSER, I would definitely try to submit that by January 15th. I would not wait until April 15th, because by the time it gets submitted and approved, you may be at the end of the fiscal year. I'm just being completely transparent with you when it comes to that ESSER grant. It has not been our friend this year, just because of the way that the way that we submit the application and amendments. We basically have to start from scratch every time we submit an amendment. Okay, any other questions? Those are all really good questions. All right. So we will move on now to Title II in the world of COVID. I hope that lots of you will participate in this discussion. Here's the problem. COVID-19 hit. Keep our distance, we must. I'm a huge Yoda fan, Baby Yoda fan, so I love that little picture. So lots of our events that we have been planning have been canceled, or either they've been moved to online, which means we have a lot of folks have money remaining in their Title II plans because they have not been able to go to conferences and so forth. So most folks think of Title II in terms of professional development, and it is that's a huge piece of Title II. But there are some other ways in which we can spend our funding. So I don't know if you can see this as well, but I basically copied and pasted these. They're on our website. So I wanted us to spend some time just looking at the different ways in which we can spend the Title II funds, and then maybe discuss some ways in which our schools are spending those funds. So we're going to go back to that in just a minute. I would love for you to unmute yourself and talk to us a little bit. I know some of you have done some amendments already, or you're planning to do some amendments. So I would love for you to share some creative ways in which you are amending your Title II plans to meet the needs of your school and spend down those funds. So who wants to share? I was a teacher, so I'm very well aware of things like wait time. Come on, guys. I want it to be interactive. Don't be afraid to share. Or you can ask questions if you'd like about how you can, some ideas that you have and you're wanting to know if it's approvable.
Okay, Tracy, one of the things, it's Maureen again. Ed Greer, one of the things we had talked about last week that I've already thrown out to our instructional team is paying a stipend to mentors.
That is a wonderful idea. That's a great way to use your Title II funds. Having quality mentors in the school is imperative. I mean, it's so important to the retention efforts of with new teachers. We all know that we have huge turnaround with new teachers within the first 5 years. We have huge percentages of teachers that are leaving, and then we have new teachers coming in. So providing them with a quality mentor is a great way to do that. It's also a mandate by the State Department. Unfortunately, it's an unfunded mandate. So using your Title II funds to pay a stipend for all of that extra work that your mentors are doing is a great way to spend the funds. The only thing I caution you on is to make sure that your mentees and mentors are keeping documents to show that they are meeting and doing the work. So you would have to have a log of their dates and times and what they met about. And it would need to be signed by both the mentee and the mentor. And you would need to submit that with reimbursement requests. So great idea. Thanks for sharing. What are some other? Go ahead.
In-house, we are doing teacher-led professional development. So I just want to clarify, my understanding is that if we pay the teachers, we just have to make sure that the work they do is outside of their regular contract hours. So if the presentation is during the contract hours, we could pay them to prepare the presentation, but not prepare them to present it.
So paying stipends to teachers to present material to other folks in your building is a great idea for Title II, and it is approvable under Title II. So yes, you would want to make sure that you're not kind of double dipping, that you're not giving them a stipend to do something that they're doing during their normal contracted hours. So it would have to be outside of their normal contracted hours to present and prepare for that particular presentation.
And then to go along with that, I have the teacher that was approved to do some mindfulness training for the whole staff.
Mm-hmm.
But a pilot team has gathered that are going to meet voluntarily after school, like 5 or 6 of them, and I could pay them to attend that training to bolster their professional development skills.
Okay, so that's another good way of looking at how to spend your Title II funds. So you're looking at paying a stipend to teachers to attend a professional development outside of their normal contracted hours, correct?
Yes, and my
Yes.
understanding from my last district, and so I'd like clarification on this, is that my last district said that you cannot give recertification credit and pay the stipend. I would love to be able to do both. So I don't know if that was just their thing or if that's actual correct information.
You know what? That is a really good question. Let me double check on that because I'm not 100% sure. So I'd rather check to make sure before I give you an answer. So you want to make sure that you want to find out if it's okay to pay them a stipend and give them certification credits, or do you have to do one or the other? Would you mind sending that to me, or either typing it in the chat box or send it to me in email so that I can follow up with that for you? And I'll follow up with everyone so that you all have an answer to that question as well.
Absolutely. I just, at my last district, we used to have to pick which one we wanted.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure. I know that you can do one or the other, but I'm not 100% sure you can do both. So I'd rather check before giving you a definite answer.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was a school. Yeah, I don't know if that was a district.
Trying to avoid paying us. So.
Well, again, I was going to say, I don't know if that's a district requirement or if that's a state requirement, because I haven't had that situation come up where someone wanted to do both of those. So let me double check on that for you before I give you a definite answer. Good questions. All right, what are some other ideas?
We've done Saturday academies and did workshops with teachers and paid them from coming in on Saturdays.
Hey, Jacqueline, yeah, that's a really good idea. And I know you guys have done a fantastic job with that. Thanks for sharing. So absolutely, that was a great way to incentivize, am I saying that correctly? Incentivize those teachers to come in on a Saturday to do some of that professional development that's hard to get to during the week. How has that been working for you? Have you had a lot of participation since you offered
Yes, they that was something, once I put it out and tell what Saturdays we're going to do, the teachers sign up very quickly, and it really provides us with a relaxed time. You know, we're in jeans and t-shirts, and they receive the stipend, but they really work hard. And so just outside of that normal day, because what I normally find is when we try to do some real work after school hours, teachers are tired. They really are. And so I get so much more out of them on that Saturday.
All right. Well, good ideas. Thank you for sharing, Jackie. All right. What else?
Hi, Tracy.
Hey, who's this? I can't hear you.
This is, hold on, let me make sure. This is Hugh and Fran. How are you?
Hey, Hugh and Fran, doing great.
I just wanted to share a great suggestion that you gave to us with the rest of the group for use of Title II funding. And one of the things that we've decided to do is give teachers professional development virtually using our curriculum Common Core. But the other thing we're doing is, and I wanted to ask if this is something we could do, because we're virtual and we're not in school direct face-to-face instruction, a lot of our teachers are offering to work with students on Saturdays to help make sure they're understanding their lessons for the week. If they need some tutoring, we were talking about offering that on a Saturday for students and parents who need that. Is that, and reimbursing teachers for their time, is that something that we can do?
So let me refresh my memory here. I know we talked about a lot of things that day. So if I'm remembering correctly, I think you were wanting to do something under parent and family engagement under Title I.
Right.
Was that correct? Okay, so I think that probably fits better under your Title I, which is a great opportunity to spend some of those parent and family engagement funds under Title I, because remember, as a Title I school, you're required to spend at least 1% of your total allocation on parent and family engagement activities. Well, parent and family engagement activities look a lot different this year than they did in the past. So it's hard to honestly spend funds for things like, and you could do refreshments and so forth under Title I, and you could also have supplies and materials for any of the materials that you were using. And we had talked about refresh my memory, but I think it was looking at some manipulatives that you could send home to parents during those virtual days. So those online virtual parent engagement activities. And you might want to tell the group a little bit more about what those are, how often you have them, and what it looks like. But if I remember correctly, you would do some kind of activity, some kind of lesson that the parents could do at home, and you wanted to provide little baggies of manipulatives so they would have those materials at home during those live presentations. Is that right?
Right. So
Okay.
basically what happens is Dr. Harmon and I do a Facebook Live session with our parents and students on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays, he reads a book to the school, the academy, and then on Thursdays, we do a project of some sort in one of the core curriculum content areas. And we thought it was a great idea. Tracy gave us a great idea by saying, listen, the next time you guys do a project, why not get some manipulatives that you can send home so the kids can actually do the work with you? And so we're looking into offering that as well.
I think that's great. That's a really good way to get the students and parents engaged, because then they can use those manipulatives to complete other work that they're doing virtually. Now, you were mentioning something. We started out the conversation. You were asking about doing something on a Saturday.
Right, where students are tutored.
And I think that's going to fit more under your Title I plan, because keep in mind that Title II is designed for things like increasing certification or increasing the quality of teachers through professional development. So they're not services that are directly related to students. I mean, obviously they're indirectly related, because when we increase the quality of our teachers or school leaders, we increase the academic achievement. But I think those would be more suited for your Title I plan versus Title II. Now you can, so again, you can pay teacher stipends. Let's say if you're doing a professional development on a Saturday and you've got some of your teachers presenting, you can pay stipends for them to present that PD, or you can also pay stipends for teachers to attend that PD because it's outside of their normal contracted hours. Now that would fit into Title II.
Got you. Okay. Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing. I love that you guys are sharing ideas with each other. All right, well, I'm going to jump into looking at our Title II allowable expenditures so that it might give you some other ideas for ways in which you can use the funding. So we've got instructional and professional staff. So we've talked about some of these things already, but I think we did not mention signing bonuses or retention bonuses. I've talked to some schools recently who wanted to pay a retention bonus for teachers who are going to stay on board, and you can definitely use your funds for that. Now, I also understand that if you amend your plan to do something like that, that's going to push you into August of next year, which is fine as long as you can get that, get those funds expended and make sure that you seek reimbursement for that, because these grants, all the funds have to be expended. FY19 and FY20 have to be expended through September 30th. So you would want to make sure you get those reimbursements to us very quickly so that we can claim that during that time period. Okay. All right. Also, I've talked to some folks who have said, listen, I've got a little bit left in 19, a little bit left in 20, and a little bit that I want to change around with 21. So I've done some amendments for folks where we took an activity and spread it out over those 3 grants, as long as they could get the funding spent in the FY19 and 20 by the expiration date. So we've gotten really creative with some of our school discussions and how to spread that out. And I'm happy to have conversations with any of you about how we can do that. Sometimes it gets really complicated, but we've been able to do it. We've gotten really creative with spreading out some things. Let's see, what else have we talked about? So stipends, I think we've talked about that a good bit already. We talked about the mentors for the teacher coordinators and so forth, the mentor coordinators, and then fringe benefits that might go along with any of the salaries, those administrator salaries. That would be for like a professional development coordinator. Usually schools don't receive a lot of funding, and especially usually not enough funding to pay a whole salary. But if you have some folks that are doing professional development at your school, maybe they have the title as a professional development coordinator, a portion of their salary could be paid out of Title II. Obviously, we all know about contracted services. That's where we're having the issues. We're having issues with not being able to pay those because of the COVID situation. Supplies and materials are usually only used or only allowed in Title II plans if it's for some of the professional development that you're paying for. So for example, let's say you have that Saturday professional development and you need some supplies and materials to implement that activity, such as chart paper or whatever. That is allowed since it is a Title II funded activity. We obviously know about travel because most of us put that in our plans. Some folks have also talked about revising their plans to help some of their teachers who are not certified. As you should all know that we had some Title II funds left with some schools that transferred to another district and some funding we may have had left at the district level. So we offered all of our schools an opportunity to help some of their teachers with the praxis exam. So if you need some more information about that, check with Emily Baker. She's handling all of that, but definitely want to think about Title II in terms of helping your teachers get certified. As you know, as charter schools, we're allowed to have set up to 75% of our teachers certified. So if you are not meeting that 75% guideline or that 75% rule, then you may want to really think about how you can use any remaining funds you have to help meet that guideline. Okay. All right. So any other questions about how you possibly could amend your Title II remaining funds to help you get those spent down by the expiration date? Or ideas? Feel free to share any other ideas you may have or questions.
So I threw up in the chat that an idea I stole from GMC was to pay our teachers for receiving Doodle certification, because we've done a huge push for Doodle Classroom and they get $150 if they achieve that. So Maureen, thanks for sharing that idea. And then is there a way to word giving some sort of bonus to assist with teacher retention? I know you said you can give a stipend or like an extra $100 for coming back if the teachers come back in August. But is there a way to give an end of the year kind of award for teachers who go above and beyond for certain things?
Yeah, and we actually have some schools that are doing some performance pay. And that's a great idea. It's a great way to use your Title II funds. You would just need to have a system in place of showing how you award that funding. So the State Department usually requires you to submit a rubric to go along with that activity so they can see how you are actually giving the funds out. How are you deciding who's going to get what amount of money? And then when you submit for reimbursement, you have to submit that documentation to us to show how you decide, if we're reimbursing you for X amount of dollars that a teacher received, you would have to submit a list of how much each teacher received and then submit the supporting documentation that goes with that to show how they were evaluated to receive that certain amount. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I have some samples that I can send you. I think I've done that for a couple of our schools. I've sent out just a few samples that our other schools have used to submit to the State Department to get that activity approved. So I'm sure schools don't mind if we share those types of things with each other.
I would love a sample.
Okay, just send me an email and I'll send you out a sample. I'll check with one of our schools. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think PD does that, and I think there's another school. But anyway, I'll check to see who it was and I'll send those to you. Okay. All right, great discussion. Thanks everyone for being involved. We're running a little bit behind schedule. I knew I shouldn't have reduced it down to 1 hour, but I love it when you guys jump in and have conversations. So I really appreciate that. Okay, so we're still looking at some Title II things, and I want us to talk about the difference between the parent's right to know versus the notice to parents regarding teacher certification. So these are two different things, but these have consistently always been confused. So I want to make sure you understand the difference between the two, because some of you may have gotten feedback from Takia saying your parents' right to know looks more like a letter to parents of teachers not properly certified or something like that. So I just wanted to briefly go over this to make sure you understand the difference between those two documents. The parent's right to know is required of every school that receives Title II funding. And this is simply a blanket statement telling your parents that they can request information about any teacher of their child. And so it has to have these different components here. And you can actually, once you get this presentation, click right here to see what ours looks like at the district level. It's simply just a short statement letting them know you have the right to request information about any of your children's teachers. Okay, and that's all it is. It's their right to know. The notice to parents regarding teacher certification is a little different. This is a letter that needs to go out to specific children who are in the classrooms of teachers in those core content areas that are not properly certified for the area, for the subject or the area that they are teaching. And this has to be sent if a child is going to have a teacher for 4 or more consecutive weeks by a teacher who's not properly certified. So this is very specific. It's different from the parent's right to know, because the parent's right to know just lets them know, hey, you have the right to ask. This letter, this notice is required if you have any students being taught by those non-properly certified teachers. So in traditional type districts, this letter usually goes home to the children in a teacher's classroom who may be on maternity leave, or maybe they've had an illness and they're going to be out for 4 more weeks. In our situation, because we're allowed to have 25% of our teachers not certified, this would need to go out to all of those all those parents in those classrooms of the core content areas. So one of the things I recommend is that when you send this letter, we have some samples. When you send this letter, you let them know that, hey, your child is in a classroom of a teacher who's not properly certified under South Carolina Department of Education guidance, but they are certified or they are qualified, in the following areas. So in other words, they may not be qualified based on the South Carolina state standards. They may not be certified, but we hired them because they are qualified based on the following criteria. So I definitely recommend that you do that. You can also send some language about how, as a charter school district, you can have up to 25% of your staff not certified. So that would be sent home to all the parents in that classroom. And again, I have samples of that on our website, so you can look at that website. This is a more personalized letter. It's not a blanket statement. It's a personalized letter that would go home to each child, the parents of each child in that classroom. Okay. All right, any questions about that?
Hey, Tracy, Maureen again. So
Yes,
just to
ma'am.
clarify, this is a requirement for Title I
Yes, ma'am.
and content only. So in the high school, if it's an elective credit, not required.
Okay, so a couple of things. Yes, you're correct. There are core content areas, and it is a requirement of Title I. But we as a district we decided a few years ago to ask all of our schools to send that home, because it's not a requirement of Title II, but because we have to document some of our Title II parent and family engagement, that is a good way to do that. So it is, as a district, we've asked all of our schools to submit that.
Gotcha.
And that is due 10 days after you send it home to the parents in Epicenter. So when you look at that Epicenter due date list, it's not listed as a scheduled task because, of course, it's going to be sent out throughout the year. You never know when you might have a situation to arise where you have to send that letter out. So if you'll just submit that in Epicenter to at least 10 days after you've sent it to the parents. Okay, good questions.
Uh-huh.
And up next, we have our discussion for our Title I schools. So if you are not a Title I school, you are welcome to leave us and enjoy the rest of your day and Thanksgiving break this week. But if you will, please let us know how we're doing by clicking on that survey link in the PowerPoint, or I'll also send it in an email with a follow-up email with the recording and, of course, the PowerPoint. Just let us know how we're doing. How are you enjoying these little discussions that we have monthly? Is it beneficial? And, let me know if there's some other things you'd like to learn more about. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump into our Title I discussion. Next steps for Title I. Those of you that are Title I schools, you know that you have received your final Title I allocations. So excited about that. We want to get those in, your applications revised and get those into us by the 4th of December. And also, I wanted to just remind you that last year for FY20, we were allowed a waiver on the 85% rule, but this year for FY21, we have not been given a waiver for that. So we want to make sure that you remember in year one, if you're a Title I school, you must spend at least 85% of your allocations in year one of the grant. Now that's a district percentage that we have to meet, but in order for us to meet that district percentage, each school needs to meet that 85% guideline. So help us meet that 85% guideline by spending all of your funds in year one. And as I've heard from many of you, it's so much easier to deal with because this year you've had 19, 20, and 21 open, and it gets a little complicated. It gets a little confusing. So some of you are like, yeah, we're going to spend all of our Title I funds this year, so we don't have any left. But that means once this final plan gets approved, once this final application gets approved, you only have until June 30th to spend that 85%. So we want to make sure that you keep that in the forefront of your brain. Spend, spend, spend. I sent these directions to you via email, but I wanted just to kind of remind you that your revisions are due December 4th, and make sure you use the preliminary application that I sent you from GEMS. So GEMS is that Grants Electronic Management System where we upload your application to the State Department. So all of you except Butler. Butler's a new school, so they're creating their application for the very first time. We've been working one-on-one on their application, but all of the rest of you that are Title I schools, you have a preliminary application in GEMS. So please use that Excel file that I emailed to you on November 18th and use these directions for making revisions so that I'll know what to do to be in the GEMS system. So if you don't have any change, if you're going to leave the activity exactly like it is, in that I think it's the second column, the action column, if you'll type no changes and leave it as it is. If you have any changes, even if you're changing just the amount, or if you're changing details in the activity, make sure you highlight all of that row in yellow to let me know. I need to go to that activity in GEMS and I need to make the changes that you highlight, or excuse me, that you have made in red. So whatever your changes are, if you'll make those in red for me, that way I just know to go in and make those changes and type changes needed or something like that. Just make sure I know that there's a change that's needed in that activity. So I'll make those changes in GEMS. If you're going to delete an activity, don't actually delete it. Type the word delete in the action column and highlight it in red. That lets me know I need to go into the system to delete it. If you actually delete it from the Excel form, I won't know that it was deleted, and I won't know to delete it in GEMS, and then your budget won't balance. Okay, so it saves a lot of time from me having to go back and figure out what you actually deleted. If I forgot to add this in the email, so if you add an activity, a new activity, you can type the word add in the action column and highlight that in yellow to let me know that this is a new activity that I need to go in and add to the system. Are there any questions about how to revise your final application? Okay, sounds pretty easy. So hopefully we'll get all of those submitted by December 4th, and that's a Friday. My goal is to have that submitted early the next week to the State Department so that we can get final approval on your plans very quickly. All right, the last few minutes, I only have 4 minutes left, so I'm going to try to go through this quickly. And if you need to hop off the call and I'm still talking, I understand. But I do want to go over the parent and family engagement policy and the homeschool compact, especially for some of our folks that weren't able to join us today, so that you'll have it for the recording. So as you know, as a Title I school, there are two very important documents that are required. One is the Parent and Family Engagement Policy, and one is the Homeschool Compact. So let's dig into the Parent and Family Engagement Policy first. So the Parent and Family Engagement Policy is a document that basically outlines what you're doing with parent and family engagement in your school. It has to be jointly developed and agreed upon and distributed to parents and family members in a written plan or policy. So I have a picture of the first page of our district's policy. You can go online to our website to find the rest of our policy there, but that's a picture of page 1. And I've listed here some of your policy requirements. So you can see that your policy has to describe how you are implementing these 6 different components. So for example, you have to describe how the policy is being jointly developed. You have to talk about your annual Title I meeting in the policy and when that meeting is going to happen, what happens during that meeting. Talk about communications and how you're communicating to families. The school parent compact. So you don't have to actually put the school parent compact in this policy, but you have to talk about how that is jointly developed between your families and the school. Coordination of services, and then building capacity for parents and school staff. So I wanted to share with you the checklist for parent and family engagement. So let's see if I can click on this and have it pop up for us. Sometimes when I'm on a Teams meeting, my computer works a little slow. Let's do it this way. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to pull it up from another page. There we go. All right. So, whoops, I clicked on the wrong thing there. So when you go to our federal and state programs page, this will at least show you how to get there when you need it. Click on Title I, scroll down to Parent and Family Engagement, and then you're going to scroll down to School Resources, and you can see here is the Parent and Family Engagement Policy Checklist. Here is the Homeschool Compact. So I'm going to click on the Parent and Family Engagement Policy first. So I just wanted to share this with you because this is an excellent way for you to look at your parent and family engagement policy to make sure it has all of the components that's required. This is what Takia is using as she reviews all of your policies that have been submitted in Epicenter. This is a good document that you can give to your planning team in the spring because, as you know, in the spring, parents have to have an opportunity to have input into the parent and family engagement policy and also the homeschool compact. So one of the things that I used to do was just print this checklist out, and I would give it to our team that was meeting, and I would give them a copy of our current policy, and I would have them go through it and actually check to see if it has all of those different things. Then we would make revisions to the plan based on the feedback from the team, and then send it home to all parents to say, we've taken a look at our policy, we've made some revisions, but we would like input from all of our parents and families. So if you have any input or would like to make any revisions, please let us know, because you have to give all parents an opportunity to have input. You'll do that in the spring with your policy and with your homeschool compact. So notice that this checklist has the different section that you need to review. So for example, this one is jointly developed. It shows you what the federal requirements are, where you can find them in the ESSA plan. And then it actually gives you in the box a checklist to check off. So it gives you questions that you can look at when you're reviewing your policy. So you can make sure you've described how parents will be involved in the development of the school parent family engagement plan and so forth. And it has that for every section. So again, here's the annual Title I meeting. Here's the requirement. And then in the box, you're asking yourselves, does this policy describe how the school will conduct the annual meeting? Now, this one says prior to November 1st. We have some schools that haven't quite gotten that done yet. So we're making sure we get it done before the end of the first semester. But anyway, this gives you an opportunity to see everything that is supposed to be in your policy. Again, I mentioned earlier in the meeting that I have not had a chance to dig into all of these. We've been checking it as yes, they have one, but now we're looking at it and giving you some feedback. If you receive feedback from Takia, then you could take some of that feedback, and in the spring, you can make revisions to your plan with your team and let that be part of your process for revising. Okay, so any questions about the parent and family engagement policy? I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because of time, but the homeschool compact checklist is very similar. And you can see all of the different components. Again, they both have to be jointly developed. And this also gives you some sample descriptions that you could place in your compact. Okay. All right. So let me go back to our presentation here. Again, here's the link, and you can also access our district's parent and family engagement policy that looks a little like that. Homeschool compacts, I just talked a little bit about that, but the policy requirements are in these 5 areas. Again, you can, here's a link for the checklist. I've also provided a link to where you can access some samples. Sometimes they're called homeschool compacts, sometimes they're called school parent compacts, but the idea is a compact between the school and the home. There's also a document here. I've only placed a copy of what the first page looks like, but this is a really good resource when you're having your planning meetings in the spring to give your team to say, hey, here's what an effective school parent compact should have. This is what it looks like. And you can take that to compare what you have with what makes an effective school parent compact. Now, you guys know me, you know I'm all about impact and what really makes a difference. These 2 documents are documents that are required. So the homeschool compact and the parent family engagement policy are 2 documents that are required. Some of you are in survival mode and you are checking the box to make sure you have what you're supposed to have, and I understand that. But you know me, you've heard me say this before. I'm all about, if I've got to check the box, I've got to do it. How can I make it meaningful to our families and to our students and teachers? This is a document that's going to help you make that compact more meaningful. So we can talk more about that individually if you like. I'm happy to talk with any of our schools during our monthly meetings, or you've heard me say this a million times. You can contact me anytime, and I'm happy to help walk you through that process to make sure that you have an effective policy and an effective school parent compact. All right, any questions about the compacts before we move into impact? We've got one more topic to talk about today. And I also know we're a little behind schedule, so I appreciate those of you hanging in with me. So no questions about policy or compacts. All right, good. I think we've done a really good job over the past 2 years of working on those and making them more meaningful. So briefly, I wanted to talk about impact of federal funds on student achievement. You've seen this slide before. I just wanted to remind you that, this is something that we're working on this year. This is only with our Title I schools. We're asking all of our Title I schools to submit an impact statement. Our goal is to develop a detailed report that outlines the impact of federal funds, specifically Title I funds, on student achievement during this year. And we want to do that because it helps. First of all, it's something that we're required to do, is to look at impact. There has not been a big focus on this in the past when it comes to monitoring from the State Department. You're going to see more and more areas of focus being put on, okay, how did you use your federal funds to really impact student achievement? So I want us to get a head start on this year by piloting this program or piloting this particular idea. It's also really good for planning. I'm going to show you a document in just a few minutes that I would like for you guys to use for your impact statement. And if we are planning appropriately and we understand what the impact has been on student achievement, then hopefully it helps us to plan better to improve student achievement. So a couple of things, we're going to, continue to talk about this each month during our coffee chats. You have a mid-year impact statement that's due in, this is January, but I think it's actually February, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have an end-of-year impact statement that's due in May. So let me show you what I've created here. And I would love your input. If you have some ideas for this and how to make this more meaningful to you as a school, please feel free to share. And we can share those ideas during our next coffee chat. But this is an Excel file that I created for you. It's already on our website. You can click there to access the mid-year evaluation form. But it's simply just an Excel file where you fill in the blanks. Let's go through each of the columns for a moment. This column A would have a copy of your plan, basically. So you're going to just copy and paste the activity directly from your approved plan. And you want to look at your FY21 plan. Now, if you have activities to your FY20 that you had to amend and you're doing those activities this year, feel free to put those activities in there as well. So if it's an activity that you paid for with Title I this year, then you'll want to include it with your FY20 plan. Okay, because I know some of you have done some amendments to your 19 and 20 plans to help you implement some ideas for this year. And that's perfectly okay, but I definitely want you to include every Title I activity in your FY21 plan. So this year's plan. And then tell me what the budget was. So you're just going to type in the budget from your plan. And this is where you get to fill in some individualized information for mid-year evaluation. Your end-of-year evaluation is going to look similar, but this is just to help you do some evaluating for mid-year. So you're going to calculate the percentage of funds that you have spent to date. So when you actually do this, it may be January that you're doing the evaluation. Whatever date that you're working on it, then you would touch base with your finance team to find out how much of that particular activity, what percentage of that particular activity have you already spent. So that gives you an idea to say, hey, it's January. We've only spent 10% of this activity. How are we going to move forward? Which some of the next sections help with. Okay, column D. Are the funds being expended at the rate the school intended? So you can simply type yes if they are, if you expected to expend the funds in that way. So an example of that might be maybe you have a parent and family engagement activity that doesn't take place until March. So if the answer is no, yes, then that would be the reason why, is because you haven't spent any money on it yet, but that's because that activity doesn't take place until March. If it's not being expended at the rate that you intended, and you place the word no in there, then let us know how you plan to meet the program objectives. So for example, you haven't been spending the money the way in which you intended. So how do you plan to move forward? Are you going to do an amendment? Are you planning to implement that activity during the second semester? What are your plans for moving forward since you have not expended those funds for that activity in the way in which you intended? All right, so the next column, E here, you're going to type in the tool that you are using to determine student impact. So what are you using? Are you using parent surveys? Are you using map data? What is it that you're using to determine whether or not that particular activity has had an impact on student achievement? And then in column F, you're going to tell us what the results of that activity has had on student achievement. And I placed a couple of questions here, and this is where you may want to help with making this a more meaningful tool to you. So if you come up with some additional questions, I'd love your input on how to make this more meaningful to you. But here are some questions to consider as you place your results in this category. Is there evidence to support that the activity had an impact on student achievement? What is that evidence? If there is evidence, then you would want to provide examples and explain the type of impact that activity had on student achievement. So an example of that might be maybe you are using map data to determine the impact of a particular program that you purchased to use this year. So you would let us know what the results are up to this point. So, have you seen an increase in student achievement based on the fact that you're using MAP to evaluate a particular activity? If no, what types of evidence do you need to start collecting to determine the impact of the activity on student achievement? So it may be, I know earlier in the year, back in August, when we were looking at this, we were looking at the types of assessment tools or the types of tool you would use to evaluate. So hopefully you did that, and now you're able to actually use those tools to determine what impact it had on student achievement. And then finally in column G, you're going to tell us what next steps are. So you've got your results in column F. Based on those results, what are you going to do next? So here are some questions to consider. Was there sufficient evidence to support the continuation of this activity? Because you may find that, we need to wait, we need more evidence to help us determine. So we're going to wait until the end of the year, reevaluate the evidence to see if it had an impact before we make any decisions. Or it may be that, it's the end of an activity, you've done it, and you show, this didn't really have an impact on student achievement. I'm not so sure we're going to do this next year. Or it could have been, we don't know yet what the outcome is, because, we didn't collect the right kind of data that we needed. So what really do we need to be collecting to determine if this is something we want to continue with next year? All right, so hopefully this will give you a good picture of where you are and how you're spending your Title I funds. And again, this is a simple fill in the blank activity, although it's not as simple when it comes to what you're actually placing in each of those boxes, because it does take a little bit of work to make sure you're collecting the right evidence that you need to give you an answer or give you a result of whether or not it had an impact on student achievement. So what questions do you have for me about this? Okay, so it sounds like, well, since there's no questions, it sounds like you understand what's required and what's going to be due in Epicenter for that February 1st deadline. We will continue to talk about this and share ideas. So if you think about ways that this that we can make this even more meaningful to you, let me know so that we can talk about that and share it, because I want you guys to have input into this. This is not for me. It's not for me to grade you or evaluate you in any way. This is a tool for you to use to help in the planning process and to help you make decisions about moving forward. So I don't want you to feel like, if you put something in here that says, you know, we have no idea. We didn't know how to evaluate this. I don't want you to feel that it's going to be a you know, a bad thing for you. This is a way for us to look at it and say, okay, so let's brainstorm some ideas. What's something you could use? This is a planning tool for you. So I want to make sure that that's clear, that this is not for me to evaluate you in any way. This is a way for you as a school to come together and help you plan better for using your federal funds to make sure that the decisions you're making are having an impact on student achievement. You may determine that it had no impact at all. You may determine that what you did caused a decrease in student achievement. Or you may determine that, you know what, there are a lot of factors that are influencing what this result is, and we need to talk about what those are. And that column F is a good way, and G also is a good place to put those kinds of discussions, because it lets you know how you need to move forward with your planning. All right, so I hope that we will continue to talk about that, and again, make revisions to it if you see the need. It may be that you decide as a school you want to add something to it, but at minimum, that's what it needs to look like. All right, so we have come to the end. We did go over just a little, about 16 minutes. I apologize for that. I tried to reduce it to 1 hour for you, but let us know how we're doing. I will send you the survey link and the recording. You know, if there are things you need to talk about that we haven't been talking about, let me know. If you like these coffee chats, I really do use your feedback. Somebody's definitely going to stick to your 1 hour. I can feel it right now. But we had a really rich discussion today, and I think it was worth it. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Here's my contact information, and Takia, my assistant's contact information. If you have any questions or anything, you know, you can always call or email. Most of you also text. And I hope you each have an amazing Thanksgiving break and are able to spend time with your family and friends. Stay safe, and we will touch base next month.